What if I told you that one of the most famous brands in the world was built by a guy who failed, not once, but twice, before he even turned 25? A guy his own family basically disowned. Well, that's exactly what happened. Today, we're diving into the unbelievable story of Milton Hershey.
So let's set the scene. It's 1881. A young Milton Hershey, completely broke and defeated, drags himself home. His second candy business just went belly up. He goes to his family, hat in hand, asking for one last loan, a final chance. And what's their response? Nope. They don't just say no, they insult him. They literally kick him out of the house. I mean, can you imagine? That's rock bottom. But you know what? It turned out to be the perfect launch pad for one of the greatest comeback stories ever.
Okay, so how does someone bounce back from that? Where does that kind of grit even come from? Well, to really get it, we have to rewind way back to the beginning. His childhood wasn't just tough. It was forged in hardship.
Milton Hershey was born back in 1857 to a family of poor farmers. But this wasn't just a case of bad luck or tough economy. No, the real problem was his father. The guy was, well, a serial schemer. He was always chasing some crazy get-rich-quick idea, like the oil boom. And every single time, he'd leave the family with absolutely nothing. It got so bad that when Milton was just 4 years old, he was described as literally starving. And his dad? He just vanished for long stretches at a time, leaving little Milton and his mom to somehow figure it out on their own.
And just when you think it couldn't get any worse, it did. In 1867, a tragedy that's just unimaginable. His little sister Serena, who was only 4, died from scarlet fever. I mean, on top of the poverty, the hunger, the abandonment. This was just a soul-crushing blow.
But that tragedy, that loss, it lit a fire in him. It became his turning point. It solidified this incredible resolve. He's only 10 years old, and he makes this promise to himself. He's going to do whatever it takes to make a better life for himself and for his mom. So he drops out of school and just gets to work.
Now, if you just looked at his early career on paper, you'd probably think, wow, this guy was a total failure. But it wasn't about failing. It was a masterclass in persistence. Check this out. He opens his first candy shop in Philly in '76. 5 years later, it fails. He's bankrupt. So he picks himself up, moves to New York, tries again in '84. And 2 years later, fails again. Another bankruptcy. I mean, most of us would have just thrown in the towel right there. But Hershey? He saw these as lessons, not dead ends.
And during one of these failures, he picked up something absolutely crucial. He's working in a candy store out in Denver, and he stumbles upon this game-changing secret. See, back then, most candy makers used paraffin. Yeah, like wax, in their caramels. But this shop? They used fresh milk. And the result was, wow, a totally different product. It was smoother, creamier, tasted way better, and it lasted a lot longer. This one little piece of information, it was going to be the key to everything.
So, armed with this secret recipe, he goes back home. Back to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, the very place where everyone, including his own family, saw him as a total failure. And this time, things were going to be different.
And when I say he started over, I mean he really started over. We're talking as humble as it gets. He's making these amazing new caramels in a tiny little back room, and then selling them from a handbasket, walking the streets. No shop, no employees, nothing. Just him, a basket, and a product that was way better than anything else out there.
And slowly but surely, people start noticing. Word gets around. Then, one day, a British importer happens to taste one of his caramels and is completely blown away. He places a massive order right on the spot. This is it. This is the big break Hershey has been working for his entire life. But there's a huge problem. He doesn't have the cash to buy the ingredients or hire anyone to actually make the order. He's stuck. So what on earth does he do now? He takes a deep breath and walks into a local bank. Now, remember, his financial track record is terrible. 2 bankruptcies. But he somehow convinces a bank officer to give him a personal loan. The banker was just so impressed that this guy could make something so amazing with basically nothing. So Hershey gets the loan, works like crazy, fills the order, ships it off, and a few weeks later, a check shows up. 500 British pounds. To put that in perspective, that's about $65,000 today. Just like that, he's out of debt, he's finally on his way.
And on his way is maybe the biggest understatement ever. The growth was just explosive. He starts the Lancaster Caramel Company, and by 1894, just a few years later, he's doing over $1 million in sales. Think about that.
The kid who got kicked out of his own home for being a failure was now one of the richest guys in the entire town.
Okay, so he's made it, right? He's a millionaire. Story over. Not even close. In fact, this is where the story gets truly insane, because right at the absolute peak of his success, Milton Hershey decides to risk everything he's built on a brand new, totally unproven obsession.
So, it's 1893. Hershey's at the World's Fair in Chicago. He's walking around and he sees this demonstration of German chocolate-making machines. Now, you got to remember, back then, chocolate was a fancy European thing, a luxury only the super rich could afford. But Hershey looks at that machinery and a light bulb just goes off in his head. He has this massive epiphany. Wait a minute, with this technology, you could make chocolate for everybody.
So this puts him at a huge crossroads. And just look at the choice he's facing. On one hand, he could stick with his caramel business. It's a proven success, a guaranteed moneymaker, $1 million company. Safe. Easy. Or he could bet everything on chocolate, a risky, unproven luxury product. And not only that, but the secret to making good milk chocolate was a closely guarded secret by the Swiss. No American had figured it out yet. The gamble was enormous.
And what does he do? He takes the risk. In 1900, he sells the entire Lancaster Caramel Company for a cool $1 million. Let that sink in. That's over $35 million in today's money. And he takes every single penny and bets it all on building a massive, state-of-the-art chocolate factory.
But here's the catch. Having a giant factory and a pile of money wasn't enough. There was still one massive hurdle to clear. He had to crack the chocolate code. He had to figure out how to mass-produce milk chocolate, a secret that the Swiss were guarding like it was a national treasure.
For 3 straight years, they tried and failed, again and again. It just wasn't working. Then, finally, one of his employees figured it out, and the genius of it was just how simple it was. See, the Swiss were using powdered milk. The Hershey team, they decided to use fresh, condensed milk. Then they developed this unique, gentle warming process that kept the milk from scorching. And that was it. That was the magic formula. It created a stable, delicious milk chocolate that they could make super cheaply. They had finally done it.
And so he releases the very first Hershey's milk chocolate bar. And how much did it cost? Just 5 cents, a nickel. This is so important. He didn't just invent a new candy bar, he totally democratized a luxury. For the very first time, chocolate wasn't something just for rich people. It was a treat for everyone, and it was available in pretty much every corner store in America.
But here's the thing. If you think the story ends there, with a wildly successful candy company, you are missing the absolute best part. Because Milton Hershey's greatest achievement wasn't the chocolate empire he built, it was what he did with all that money.
He didn't just build a factory in the middle of nowhere. He built an entire town around it, Hershey, Pennsylvania. And this wasn't one of those dreary, gray company towns you hear about, no. This was a beautiful model community. He built modern homes with electricity, top-notch schools, hospitals, churches. He even built an amusement park, a zoo, and a theater, all for his workers and their families to enjoy. And this is the most incredible part of his entire legacy. Milton and his wife Kitty, they were never able to have children of their own. So, in 1909, they used their fortune to found a school for orphan boys. And, before he died, he put nearly his entire fortune, including control of the Hershey Company, into a trust to fund that school forever. Get this, today, that school, the Milton Hershey School, controls around 40% of the Hershey Company's stock. It's now one of the wealthiest schools in the entire country, all dedicated to helping kids in need.
So you have a guy whose story started with being rejected, kicked out, and literally starving, and it ends with this incredible legacy of generosity that's still changing lives today. It really makes you think, and it leaves us with one powerful question. How many failures are you willing to push through to build something that's more than just a company, something that's a community?